Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, in plain English. John Cartier was Minister of Justice in 1982 when the Charter of Rights and Freedoms became part of Canada's Constitution. The Charter created constitutional protections for individual rights and freedoms. This included fundamental freedoms, legal rights, equality rights, democratic rights, and mobility rights. Now, with the Charter, Canadians can challenge in-court laws that restrict their rights or go against them.
What are our individual freedoms?
We have fundamental freedoms, which are the right to express your opinion, to belong to any group, to organize peaceful meetings, and the freedom to practice your own religion.
Are there responsibilities that come with these freedoms?
Yes, if you're going to express your opinion, then be informed and respect other people's choices. Also respect other religion choices. And if you're going to have peaceful meetings, remember to act responsibly and respect whatever they have to say. We also have democratic rights, like being able to vote in an election, participate in an election, and to run in an election. Another right that we have is our mobility rights. This right allows us to leave or stay in Canada, as long as you are a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, and also move and earn a living in any province.
Can this right be taken away?
Yes, if you commit a crime, this right can be taken away, if you abuse it. It also gives you a criminal record, which affects things like getting a job and traveling. This brings us to our legal rights. You have the right to feel free and safe, to have a fair and quick trial, and be assumed innocent until proven guilty. This brings us to our next right, which is equality rights. And yes, everyone is treated the same. Everyone in Canada cannot be discriminated against because of race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, gender, and or mental or physical disabilities.
Minority language legislation.
Sections 16 to 20 of the Charter established French and English as official languages of Canada. These sections also established New Brunswick as an official bilingual province. Section 23 of the Charter says that French-speaking and English-speaking people of a big enough size in any province has the right to publicly fund schools that serve the language community. French-speaking people are very distinct people, and French is the language that expresses their identity. The people of Quebec want to make French the language of the government and everyday language of work, education, and business. Also, the people of Quebec made it clear that if your parents were French, you could not go to an Anglophone school. Indian Act. It was made in 1876, dealing with the status of Indians. It was the first document telling us the right of the First Nations, but they were more like limitations of what they could do. This was the collective rights were also established, which basically said who was a status Indian or not. After the government basically had power over the First Nations, telling them when to have elections, if they could travel, or take political action and wear traditional clothing. They got good benefits, but there were also some bad ones. Like, they were assimilated and had to follow what the government said to them, and they weren't in control of what happened to them anymore. Until 1960, the First Nations had to give up who they were and get into the English culture involving clothes and language to gain the right to vote. Royal Proclamation. The Royal Proclamation happened in 1763. Great Britain took over Canada, made negotiations with the First Nations for the land. To do this, they used numbered treaties. Numbered treaties. The main reason they wanted to make peace with the First Nations using treaties was because the first Prime Minister of Canada, which at the time was John A. Macdonald, wanted to make a railway to unite British Columbia to Canada. The problem was that the First Nations were in the way of the land, where the train would go through. They could have fought them out of the land, but they didn't want to because it would cost them much less to negotiate. The Treaties 6, 7, and 8 were the ones that were the most important in Alberta. They dealt with healthcare, education, fishing and hunting rights, reserves, farming, and special benefits. The federal government gained more than they had lost. Since now they had power over the land, they could do anything they wanted. Métis treaties. There were also Métis people that lived on these lands. They were totally ignored by the Canadian government and did not benefit from the treaties since the government looked at them differently than the Aboriginal people. Governance and settlements in Alberta. The federal government at the time was of course Britain. Because of the number treaties, they got land claims. The government brought settlers into Canada so they could expand and have more civilized people that also had the same religion with